Hey everyone, it's Kanoj here and I'm back with a brand new video, and today I wanted to share 23 rules that you can use for 2023. So let's get started. So rule number one is speed. So by speed, I mean going from idea to execution in as fast as possible, right? What I don't mean is, say example, you have started executing and that takes a while because generally speaking, things take longer than you expect them to. So it's especially if you're really optimistic. So I'm just talking about the first part. So how do you go from speed to execute, from idea to execution really quickly? So firstly, you need to spend some time identifying. You spend a couple minutes just thinking, okay, what can you do right now, right? Assuming you're not like doing something else. So, for example, if you're listening to this while driving, then don't just whip out your laptop and then just start working. That's just a terrible idea. So, drop my pen again. I always do this right in the beginning of videos. um, but you ideally want to identify what you can do. If not right then and there, then what can you do within an hour? If not in an hour, then what can you do in that same day, right? Ideally. And ideally, you're not watching this super late at night, so at a point where you have to sleep or anything. But figure out what you can do then and there, and just try to move as fast as you can from getting the idea out of your head into the real world. So, for example, if you want to make a YouTube video like this, what's a really speedy approach? You've got an idea for a YouTube video, open up a Notion doc, write up the title of whatever you want to call the video roughly. You can change it later, and write out like some bullet points you want to talk about. You don't even have to write a script. You can if you want to, but I don't write a script. Like my setup is basically I've got this whiteboard, this huge whiteboard that I've had for the past few years. Got this pen, got a phone that's recording, so I don't have like a fancy camera. I've got a laptop. It's on a laptop stand just because it's just easier to see slightly, but you don't need to have a laptop stand at all. That's just extra fanciness for no reason. And I've got a Notion doc up with just some bullet points of things that I want to talk about, right? That's literally all these videos are, right? I have a whiteboard that I use for drawing sometimes if you watch some of my past videos, but that's it. That's the entire setup. So you don't need to spend too long in planning for a lot of things. If you have an idea for a business, for example, what can you do? If you can write code, then great. You can just go on VS Code, write up a landing page, put it, and you can deploy it for free if you use something like Vercel or you use something like Netlify or even GitHub Pages. That's fine. Or alternatively, if you can't code, then you can go on Webflow or a tool like Webflow and build up a landing page again. And it'll cost you a bit of time, but you can do it for free and you can get some validation for it, right? You might need to spend some money on Webflow to get form submissions. I don't know. I don't think it costs anything, at least not to my knowledge. Or okay, and what about if you can't do either of those? Well, what can you do? If you've got your idea, write it down on a piece of paper or something, or type it up, and then try to figure out who the ideal user would be, and try to talk to them and see if the problems that they face are in alignment with the solution that you're trying to build. And if they are, then great. You're doing a great job. You can build that relationship and try to later down the line you can reach back out to them to try use your product or something and get feedback or sell them. Or you can just if it's a case where your solution is not in alignment, you can you can try to find more people who might be a good fit, or you can just try to adjust the solution after talking to enough people. So there is always things you can do within that same 24-hour span. So try to move as quickly as you can. And the next point that I want to touch on really quickly is about consistency. So this is not rule 2, but this is hat in hand with rule 1. So when we talk about speed, we also talk about consistency, right? So when saying moving fast constantly, right? Most people think that you're just moving fast at the same pace. That's not moving fast, right? Because what happens is when you're moving fast at the same pace, you'll generally start to plateau downwards. So you want to continuously find ways where you can go faster and faster and faster, right? So that could mean automating things, automating tasks, whatever, right? You can figure out the micro details later, but ideally you want to get as fast as you possibly can. And the number one reason why speed is so important is because when you move quickly, you can iterate quickly. And so, for example, if you have a product and it takes you 6 months to build and launch, you get 2 shots a year. if you launch a product in a month and you are able to iterate 12 times, you've got 12 shots on goal. And the more shots on goal you have, the closer you'll get to your end goal, right? The more the likelihood goes up. So iterating quickly is super important, because it's also not about the 10. It's not. There's a saying that you should put 10,000 hours into your work, right? And that will get you success. Now that'll get you skill, right? If you're doing focused work, but it's not about 10,000 hours. It's about 10,000 iterations, because the more iterations you have, the closer you can get to your end goal. And obviously, 10,000 is just an arbitrary number for iterations cases, but the rule still applies. So that's why you should be fast. Rule number 2 is stick to your values. So in my last video, I talked about having a North Star and then identifying the actions that would help, get you to that end goal. But something else that also helps is having values. Now, if you are a person that practices a specific religion, then you've already got like a guidance rule, right? Because a lot of religions are about restrictions in a sense, right? You cannot do certain things, right? Because if you stand for everything, then you tolerate nothing, right? If you stand for everything, then you have no tolerance, essentially. So if you have certain values, and I'm not saying that if you're not religious, you can't have this, right? I'm not trying to convert you either. If you have religious values, then great. Use them as a guiding principle, and you can add to that if you want to, or you can pick the ones that are most important to you. If you don't practice any religious value, then write down some of the values that you believe to be really important to you. So, for example, in my case, I don't drink alcohol, right? That's a principle I've always had. So that's one of my 5 principles. I recommend having up to 5. You can have more if you want to, it's up to you. But 5 is generally a good number to stick with, because it can be difficult if you restrict yourself for everything, right? So make sure you define what those rules are. So maybe it's don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat, don't eat meat, for example, don't drink alcohol, abstinence, maybe, whatever it is. Write it out, and those are going to be your guiding life principles, and do not break them. And that's very, very important, right? When you allow yourself to even bend, not even necessarily break, but just bend some of the rules to suit your current situation, you allow the slippery slope to occur. So what do I mean by this? So, say example, one of the principles is don't drink, right? Like that's one of mine. And you decide you achieve some milestone, or you're at a party or something, and you take a sip. You're like, that's just a sip, right? It's celebrating this big thing. So you create this little dot, right? That's the first event. Then life goes on, more time passes, something else happens. You've done it again. Hold on a minute. Didn't you say you shouldn't do that? But now you've done it. And as you keep going on and allowing it to happen, you get a spiral, right? And you end up you've completely broken that value. Now, I'm not saying that if you've broken a value once, you're going to absolutely and utterly do it again. You should try your absolute best to not break it. But if you allow yourself to bend a rule, bend one of your values, and break it, and you're comfortable with it, it's going to lead to the slippery slope. So be very, very careful and deliberate about what you pick as your life values. Religious values are great. And if you do break it, forgive yourself, right? Forgive yourself, because, human beings make mistakes. But also, make sure you feel enough pain from that mistake to never repeat it again. Otherwise, you're going to follow down that slippery slope. So that's rule 2. Stick to your values. Rule number 3 is own your word. So this is probably more applicable to any younger viewers, but most people these days, if they say the words, I promise, or I give you my word, they don't follow through with it. If you say those words, those 2 phrases, or something like that has the same meaning, keep your word. Hold your end of the bargain. It is so, so important. And it's kind of sad that most people kind of just use it so loosey-goosey, like, oh yeah, I promise to do that. And they just don't do it. Like, the best way I can explain this is, imagine you meet someone, right? Your trust level is 50%. So that's how much they see you, how much trust they have in you, 50%. You give your word to them and you follow through. your trust in them goes up by 10. If you break a promise, it goes down by 20, right? And you're going to just lose trust in people, because that's how they subconsciously are seeing you. They're subconsciously seeing whether, here's what people are thinking, right? When they meet people, subconsciously at least, they're thinking, is this person going to threaten my survival, or are they going to aid to my survival and make it easier? Really speaking, that, because as human beings, our subconscious minds are primitively wired. So that's what people are thinking. If you said something like, hey, yeah, I'll take out the trash in a bit, and you don't do it, you lose a little bit of credibility. But if you say, I promise to do it, and then you don't follow through with it, you are going to lose a lot of trust. So be very, very careful about what you promise, and whenever you do make a promise, absolutely and utterly follow through with it. Do not let anything stop you from following through with your promise. If it means you have to make fewer promises, do it, but make sure your word holds weight. That is so, so important. And I see a lot of young people these days don't really appreciate that. And maybe I'm just old school, but I think your word has value, and I think that can mean a lot. So that's rule 3, own your word. Rule number 4, and I can't believe I have to say this, but respect your parents. Again, this is for younger people, maybe for some older people as well. I see oftentimes now, I guess this is mainly for the Western audience, because I don't think I have anyone that's really not Western that watches my videos, but even though because it's a very small audience, but respect your parents, right? I remember once, maybe 5 and a bit years ago, I went to my friend's house to drop over a birthday gift. I bought him a t-shirt, and he wasn't there at the time, but his brother was. So he said, yeah, just come in, just hang out for a bit. He'll be back in a little bit. He's just going out to get some food. So I was like, all right, cool. So I'm waiting with him, and we're just talking and stuff. His mum comes in, right? And she basically offers, she just has a greeting, has a quick chat, and then just offers us both a drink. And I said, no, thank you, auntie, it's fine. And then his response was like to say, no, he shouted, no, F off. I'm just like, what did I just witness? Like, here's what happened. So your mum just comes in to the room and offers you a drink because she cares about you, right? And your response to that isn't, no, thank you, or yes, please, could I have this, or something like, rational, but to instead swear at her and berate her. Like, that's just stupid. And it's actually really disgusting that I see so many young people, especially in the West mainly, have this comfort almost of disrespecting their parents, but it's absolutely not acceptable. Unless your parents are some evil tyrants, which I'm guessing in 99.9% of cases they probably aren't, show respect to your parents, right? They raised you to the best of their ability. They've probably given a lot of their life for you, and you should show love and respect to your parents. Like, have some honor and have some integrity and be respectful to your parents. Don't swear at them and disrespect them. It's one thing to disagree with your parents, and that's okay. You can disagree with them on certain things, but do not disrespect your parents, especially in front of other people, right? It's one thing in private, which you shouldn't do anyway out of principle, but in front of other people, that's also just stupid. It just sends a bad message. And I remember when I saw that happen, I had to go at him in front of his mum, and I asked him to apologize because I thought that was just absolutely disgusting. So yeah, don't disrespect your parents. And it's just, I don't think it's an acceptable thing, to be honest with you. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just me being old-fashioned, but I don't think it's right to be extremely disrespectful and rude to people in general, let alone the people who raised you. Yeah, that's just my opinion, though. So take that with how you will. Rule number 5 is tell the truth, or at least don't lie. This one comes directly from Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life. If you've not read that, then give it a quick read, or you can even listen to like a summary from YouTube. There's a bunch of different YouTubers who have made summaries over it, and even specific portions of the video of his book. So you can feel free to just Google the 12 rules and find each rule and try to find an explanation for it if you like the audio side of things better, or even listen to an audiobook if you want to. And there's also another book by Sam Harris called Lying, and that's also a good book. You can find, there's an audiobook on YouTube. It's about an hour and a bit long. I can leave a link in the description. You should definitely give that a listen as well. But the reason why it's so important to tell the truth, or at least don't lie, is because when you lie, even if it's a small white lie, right? First of all, you have to keep a track of all of the things that you've said, which takes up all of your mental bandwidth, right? So that you can avoid looking like a liar, because again, subconsciously, you're trying to avoid being exiled from the tribe being your collective peers. So you don't want to look like a liar and you don't want to look bad. So you have to keep a track of all of these lies. So that's the first thing, right? The second thing is when you lie and you comfortably lie, and it can just create that spiral again, right, where you start telling bigger and bigger lies. And also, if you're caught out in any of them, you're going to look like a liar, and it's going to be very difficult for people to trust you. So I think I've mentioned this point about trust a couple times in this video already, but it's very important that other people do, trust you. So yeah, tell the truth or at least don't lie. Rule 6, kindness to all, especially those who do not deserve it. Now, this is a bit of a hard one. If someone's nice to you and they're in a good mood and you're in a good mood, it's easy to be nice to them. If someone's nice to you and you're in a bad mood, it's a bit harder to be nice back to them. If you're in a bad mood and someone else is in a bad mood and they're horrible to you, it's very difficult to be nice to them. But that's when you need to be kind the most. Because truthfully, most people are going through something that you don't know about. You don't know 99% of the things going on in someone else's life, right? So just show kindness, right? You don't know how bad things are for them. Maybe they're just having a rough day. Maybe they're going through something. You don't know. It could be something so small and trivial that's just set them off. Or it could be something that they're currently struggling with and they haven't really just confided that into you for whatever reason. And, they're just going through it. And that can be really difficult. And sometimes they will just lash out. So if you show kindness in those situations, which is, very difficult to do, but if you can do it, awesome. There's a good chance that person will just come back to you and say, hey, listen, I'm sorry for getting angry at you earlier or being mean to you earlier. I was just, at that time, I was going through this. Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. That's good. That's great. Because then at least you get some understanding, right? You can understand, you can empathize a bit better. And you won't be able to do that if you're just regurgitating hate back at them. You can't mirror hate. You have to take hate and convert that back into kindness and love. Rule number 7 is enjoy the present moment, but do not give in to indulgences. So what do I mean by this? So I'm not saying, what I mean is to not give in to indulgences. So say example, if you feel like, I feel like playing a video game, or I feel like eating some junk food and breaking my diet, or I don't feel like exercising, I feel like sleeping in, I feel like insert indulgence here, whatever it is, right? That is bad. I'm not saying to do that and just enjoy that moment, right? What I mean is enjoy the present moment by being present in whatever you're doing. So for example, if you are having a conversation with someone, be present in that conversation, listen to them, try to be engaging in that conversation if you can. It's not always possible because maybe your mind's preoccupied with a billion other things, and that happens. That's fine. That's normal. But whenever you can, just try to be engaged in that conversation. And another example is, say example, you're just sitting around, I don't know, maybe you're just reading or something, focusing on whatever you're doing, paying attention to the things around you. Like, what can you smell? What can you hear? What can you see? What can you feel? That's really good, and that's the practice of meditation. In its essence, meditation is the practice of mindfulness, right? That's what you're really trying to get at. Because when you look in the past, right, and you see the sadness and you see the pain, you're going to feel that depression. When you feel that anxiety and fear, it's because you're looking into the future. But when you feel the most happiness is when you're right in that moment, whatever you're doing, and you're feeling it. You're not thinking about the past, you're not thinking about the future, you're just there and then you're present. You're truly present. And that's when you feel the most happiness. And the way you can do that is by practicing meditation. So closing your eyes for a minute, just going, taking a few deep breaths and focusing on your breaths, and then paying attention to your surroundings, for what you can hear, what you can smell, what you can taste, whatever, right? Another way is that's more productive is to get engaged in a task in whatever you're doing. So say example, if you are, I don't know, writing an essay, getting really engaged into that essay, breaking it down to its components, into small enough steps that you can execute on, planning it out, doing work, right? Getting really engaged into your work and doing focused work is a really great way to be present. So yeah, try to be present more if you can. Rule number 8 is meet more people. And this is a very, very important one. So by meet more people, I mean basically networking, right? And there's 2 types of networking. The first kind is deliberate. The second kind is indeliberate. With indeliberate people, you do not know the caliber of people that you are meeting. You're just taking a random guess and hoping for the best, right? Maybe you're going out there. Like an example of this is like a university event where it's like a freshers fair and it's just meeting people. Because it essentially is like a networking event, essentially, because it's in essence, because you are meeting people, you're building relationships, right? And that's really the essence of networking, is just meeting new people and building ideally long-term relationships with them. That's really what networking is. So that's indeliberate, because you don't know the kind of people you're meeting there and you don't have a specific goal in mind. Or if you do have a specific goal in mind and you don't know the people you're meeting there, that's also a bad idea. So like the university freshers fair, you know that students are going to be there, but you don't know the kind of students. And it could still be worth your while because you can still have fun, but it might not provide you as much value as you would ideally have liked. It might not. But that's why it's indeliberate. With deliberate networking, it is going to events and meeting people where you know the caliber of person that you are going to be meeting, and you have the objective in your mind already of what you're trying to aim, what you're trying to get. So maybe you're just trying to network with, find new friends that are really helpful. Maybe you're trying to get started in a career in something and trying to meet people who can help you get there. Like, for example, you want to be an investment banker and JP Morgan's hosting like a fair for people who want to get in there into the field of investment banking. Then you know that the 2 types of people that are going to be there, right, are going to be bankers, or people that work there, so bankers, recruiters, whatever. And the other kind of people that are going to be there are going to be students who are just like you, trying to also do that. So you're going to build network in two different dimensions: people on your level and people above your level, and that's really useful, right? And don't be afraid. The final point I make on this is don't be afraid to spend money for deliberate networking. For indeliberate, don't bother wasting money. If it's free, then, and if you want to have some fun, go ahead, right? And if it's very cheap, then go ahead. For deliberate, do not be afraid to spend money. If you've been relatively like reasonable and you've not been a complete idiot with your money, and you've been spending reasonably, but you've also been saving reasonably, or maybe you work and you're earning and you're not blowing your entire paycheck entirely, then yeah, spend some money and go and network with people. I remember earlier this year, I was in Miami for about a week, and it cost me about £1,000, right? And that was like, I was like, I had to deliberate over that really, really like intently, and I had to even consult a few people and have a chat and just hear different opinions, because I was just, I am an eclectic person, so I had to consult other people to get their opinions and just use that feedback and just try to sort of piece together my own sort of worldview almost. So I ended up deciding to go and do it, and my rationalization was, the worst case scenario is that I get to go to Miami for a week and have some fun, right? And I won't be like screwed over or anything if the worst case happens, right? And I just burned it, right? Like I'd be fine. At the time I was like, okay, yeah, fine. I mean, it's expensive, obviously, but if worst case happens, I'm not going to be like destroyed or anything. It's just going to be £1,000 that I spent, and it's a lesson that I learned, right? But when I ended up going there, I ended up making friends with people who were like 2 decades older than I was, and they really appreciated that, because I was like one of the youngest people who went to this like event, right? It was like a 3-day long event, and those people ended up becoming my friends, and I met so many people there that became like really cool to hang out with and talk to. And when I went to San Francisco not too long after, I met up with them again, and we went on a hike, and I got to hear a lot of their insights, and we got to deepen the relationship further. So that was absolutely worth it, spending that money. I'm really glad I did, and that's why I recommend to anyone that if you can spend money on deliberate networking, do it. In my case, at that time I didn't really understand the difference between deliberate and indeliberate, but now I kind of have a better sense of it. So that's why I'm just saying that you should, think about it like when you think about networking and meeting people, going to events where you're going to meet people, think about it in these 2 sort of contexts: indeliberate versus deliberate. And yeah, I had a good sense of the kind of people that were going to be at this event anyway. So that's why it was a good investment anyway. So that's rule number 8. Rule number 9 is to give selflessly, not selfishly. So first of all, yes, if you give and you do something to help someone else, yes, it is a net benefit to society. However, if you want to make giving as good as possible and as pure as possible, first of all, don't advertise it. I feel like this is obvious. So if you help someone out, like, I don't know, like, for example, you buy a meal for a homeless person or something, don't just whip out your phone and record yourself giving the food to them. It's a terrible idea, right? It's very scummy. You're doing it for attention. Don't do that. I've made this mistake in the past, like years ago. I refuse to absolutely do it now because when I was a kid, right, I didn't really understand it. I didn't understand as much as I do now. And I definitely still have a lot to learn, but as a kid then I didn't really understand all of these things, and even then I still kind of questioned it in my gut. It didn't feel right filming or taking a picture or doing all of these things for attention. It was just stupid. So when you're helping someone, don't advertise it. And second of all, when you're giving, you should be helping for the sake of doing good, not for any selfish reason. So not because you want to feel good or to get like people to see that and adore you. That's not pure. If you want to give the true selfless version of giving is to give for the sake of doing good, not telling anyone, not verbally, not through any sort of social media. And the final step of that is to not feel anything when you do it. So it's not feeling good. And yes, I get it, right? It's like, it's nice to feel good, especially when you help someone, but it's very transactional that way, right? When you're giving for the sake of just giving and doing it right, you shouldn't feel anything. You should feel very neutral. You should feel the exact same before you did it, before you even thought about doing it, and after you've done it. That's the way I like to think about it. And that's true selflessness, in my opinion. I'm not going to advertise or tell you how to think about that, but that's just the way the way I think the best way to do it is. You're cool whether or not you want to take that or not. But yeah, I mean, giving is still good anyway. So if you can help, do it, even if it is for a selfish reason. But ideally, you want to do it for a selfless reason. Okay, I'm back, and that was rule number 9. Rule number 10 is show appreciation to others for the small things. So it's very easy, especially like when you get used to a specific habit or specific thing happening, or having a specific item to go on that hedonic treadmill, where initially you've got that excitement, but then over time it sort of just dies out, right? But it's important to consciously appreciate things. So if someone does something on a regular basis for you, so say example, that's like your mum cooking your food, for example, or a friend of yours giving you a lift on a frequent occasion, or even if it's just a one-off, actively show appreciation to people. So tell people that, hey, I appreciate you. Thank you for doing that. Or if someone does it very often, just go out of the blue and just say, hey, you've been doing this for me for a while. I'm very grateful for you. Thank you. Like, just actively taking the time to show gratitude is always a good idea. And if it's not for a person, maybe it's for a specific item. So maybe it's like a laptop or a phone or whatever it is. Just in your mind, just think about how grateful you are, and think about how much like different your life would be if you did not have that item. Let me just see if I can straighten this camera out a little bit. That's a little bit better. Yeah, it's probably slightly better. But yeah, that's essentially rule number 10, is to show appreciation for the small things, because without the small things, you can't really have what you have now, and the small things do add up. Rule number 11 is to avoid the news and politics. I made a video about this a few years ago where I said that if you sat down and watched 10 news stories in a row from any given news source, one news source at a time, you would find that 9 out of 10 of those stories would be negative, and almost all of them would be irrelevant to your life. If there is a specific piece of news that is very, very important to you, it will find its way to you somehow, through some medium. Now, I'm not saying being completely illiterate, but I'm just saying avoid watching the news. If you want to find information, use Twitter. Like, that's what I use for my news. Or you can subscribe to specific news sources like TechCrunch, BusinessWire, or whatever, or even BBC if you really want to. But most of the time it's very negative, so I'd avoid it. Occasionally there is a positive story, but most of the time it's not. And the second component of that is avoiding politics, because with politics comes division, and with division, if you have division and you have a lack of self-awareness, it will cause hatred. So if you have, for example, most people, when someone has a specific opinion, instead of people criticizing that opinion and saying, hey, I disagree with that opinion, they will go, hey, that opinion is wrong and I hate you. As if a person cannot change opinions, which is foolishness. Most people don't have that self-awareness, and if you don't have that self-awareness, just avoid it. Just avoid the politics in general. It'll make you hate more people unnecessarily, and it's okay if people disagree with each other. I think that's healthy. But, you know, you should just avoid it, because it's a very toxic rabbit hole, and you just don't want to go down it. You don't need the division. You just need to focus on the things that are very important to you and stick within that. You can have opinions on certain things, but you don't need to engage in all of these political conversations, because they're useless. Rule number 12 is to live a little. So this rule is specific for people who are actively ambitious, meaning that you have these big dreams and you are actively taking action on those dreams. So you're actually working on it, and you're not like ambitious but you're lazy and you're not doing anything about it. I'm not speaking to you there. If you are active and ambitious, it can be very easy to sacrifice all of your entire life for work. This camera angle is slightly bothering me a bit. Let me just do that. Is that more straight? I feel like that's more straight. Yeah. It can be very easy to, when you're ambitious and you're actively working on your goals, it can be very easy to just sacrifice your entire life for your goals. And that makes sense, right? Like, that's what you've been told to do. You've been told that you need to sacrifice, like all of these motivational gurus, that you need to sacrifice everything, and yes, it's difficult. You shouldn't care about your happiness and all of these things, right? But to an extent, they're correct. For the most part, you probably should. But once in a while, let yourself go out and have some fun, right? That's not work related. Go, I don't know, take a few hours a week and go for a hike. That's a great use of time. That's great to really center yourself. That's something I enjoy doing. Or go and do something fun with a group of friends. Like, go bowling, watch a movie, go do some sports or something, right? Like, it's okay. You have permission to go and enjoy yourself a little bit. Don't overindulge and just go crazy with it and just say, okay, I'm running wild with it, and just start partying every day or something. But if you go out once a week to spend like 2 or 3 hours, or even 4 to 5 hours, or even a day, just to have fun with some of your friends, that's fine. That's worth it. Because the reason why that's so important is when you're older and you look back at your life, those are going to be some of the memories that you look back at fondly. And you want to try to, by the end of your life, ideally, I think it's very important to have memories with people that you cared about that were meaningful. I think that's what gives life its meaning. I think when it comes to the meaning of life, I think it's really boiled down to doing things that you care about with people you care about, and making meaningful memories that will last you. Those are things that really bring you happiness. So it's okay. I get it. You're working on your dreams, your goals, and that's fine. And you should. You should. You're crushing it. But it's okay to take a few hours off to spend time with your friends and family. And I realize no one is going to tell you this, so I'm going to tell you this. You should do that, and it's probably beneficial to your work anyway, because when you detach yourself from work, when you re-engage yourself, you're going to, you're gonna think better. You're gonna be able to solve problems a little bit better because you're more refreshed, you're more recharged. So go out and have a little bit of fun, not too much, but have a little bit every now and then. Rule number 13 is ego detachment. So ego is death, right? The more you index on your ego, you're going to lose your humility to do things. So, for example, if you think you're too good to put in the work, you are not going to do the work, and that is going to kill you. So try to be humble as much as you possibly can, and index on being a humble learner. And that ties into rule number 14, open-mindedness. But I'll get into that in a second. With ego, just identify what the actions or the feelings or thoughts you have that are egotistical and try to reduce them. It's there's two types of ego. There's the good ego and the bad ego. With the good ego, that can motivate you, that can certainly get you started and be like, yeah, I think I'm doing great, and it can push you forward sometimes. Because you believe you have a higher standard, and that's fine. If you have a high standard, that's good. That's not ego necessarily. That's just you having a high standard for yourself, and that's a good thing. But the bad ego is stopping you from taking action. Basically, that's what I'm trying to get at. Or hurting other people, for example, right? So try to index as much as you can away from the bad ego. You can use a little bit of the good ego. Don't get too relished in it though, because it can easily transition into the bad ego, and you can just lose your humility to do the work, and that's really important. So yeah, detach from your ego as much as possible. Yeah, and be open. And this ties into rule number 14, which is having an open mind and be willing to be the learner. Right? You can learn. You absolutely can learn something from everyone, whether it's good or bad, whether it's something that you want or something that you don't want, whether it's a behavior that you like or behavior that you don't like. You can learn something from everyone. Be open-minded and enter conversations with an open mind as a student, as a learner, and you will open your mind to more possibilities. So that ties in. So having an open mind is really is essentially is a key component of humility. And if you have an open mind, you're not going to be egotistical, because your ego will stop you from having an open mind. So that's a good example. So if you have a closed mind, then that's your ego. Having an open mind is humility. So try to index on that as much as you can. 15 is pursue what you find curious over a long time. So curiosity and progress equal passion. So, you know, like, I know this is I realize this is a bit controversial, right? But one of the things that Andrew Tate says is that you should not care about doing something that you're passionate about, right? And he's right to an extent, but he's thinking of passion in the same way that everyone else is thinking about it. And that's not me taking a shot at him. It's just like, that's just how everyone thinks about passion. So that's probably why he's described it that way. But most people think about passion as this thing, right? This big thing that they're passionate about, right? Like this mission. But you don't have to be passionate about a mission per se. You can be passionate about the micro details. You can be passionate about the process. For example, if you have a cement company, right? And you don't have to be passionate about cement, but you can be passionate about talking to customers, and you can be passionate about building relationships. You can enjoy doing, sales, and you can enjoy doing order fulfillment and all of that stuff. You can enjoy doing R&D and thinking of other use cases of cement. I don't know, but you don't have to think about passion as just a mission, right? It's not just something that you enjoy. It's something that you're curious about and that you're able to make progress on. Because passionate people are people that make progress. When you make progress, you fit into what your human needs, right, for growth. The fourth human need is growth, and you fit into that when you make progress, which is why when you accomplish a goal, you feel less happy than when you've made progress to achieving that goal. It's because of that fourth human need. So passionate people are mistaken for mistake vision and happiness for curiosity and progress. So be willing to explore your curiosity over a long period of time, and as you make more progress, you'll enjoy it more, and you'll be able to uncover some interesting things. And also, just as a side note, doing something that you don't care about isn't going to make you fulfilled. I didn't say happy, but fulfilled. Because you don't care about it, it's not going to give your life meaning. So, if you do something that you do care about and that you are genuinely curious about, then you're going to find a greater sense of fulfillment from that. That extends beyond financial means. And just a quick note I just written as well on this is, look at the things that you're curious about and try to answer the questions that you have. The pursuit of answering those questions will lead to passion. I feel like that's a very succinct summary. So there you go. How about it? Rule number 16. Avoid instant gratification as much as possible. So instant gratification is terrible. I think everyone's kind of told you that. Like, getting these cheap dopamine hits will reduce your barrier to doing difficult things, basically, right? There's enough videos about this, so I'm not going to spend the next 5 minutes going into it. Just the TLDR version is identify what those impulses that are giving you those quick hits of dopamine are. Try to reduce those bit by bit over over a few weeks, few months, right? You don't have to go cold turkey in one hit, right? Most people will tell you to do that, and it doesn't work out long term, right? If you want a longer term result, break it down bit by bit. So if you're spending an hour on TikTok a day, for example, cut down on next week to 55 minutes. Week after, 50 minutes, and keep going down until you're at 5 minutes or less. And if you want to stop it cold turkey, then you can. It's easier to do that. You don't have to go diving into the abyss straight away. You don't have to go diving into the deep end. You can just start small and just work your way. That's the easiest way to do it. Right, next one is rule number 17. Learn a skill and get good at it. So this is the advice I normally give to first-year undergraduates, but most people who are in their first year of university will spend it partying. This is okay to an extent, and it's understandable why they do it, because first year doesn't count, but you will waste that time massively. I've compared people that have listened to my advice and taken my advice seriously about learning a skill in their first year of university versus people who didn't, and the differences are astonishing. Just by taking less time, that doesn't mean going cold turkey again, but just spending more time on learning a skill that's outside of your current undergraduate studies, that can help you. So, for example, in my case, I studied economics, and in my first year of university, I didn't party at all. I think I went to one nightclub ever in my first year, and that was when my friends came down, and then we went to a club, and then within half an hour we left anyway because it was just not our thing. But I didn't go to clubs. I basically spent my time doing my studies, and outside of my studies, I spent my time studying programming, right? And that was very valuable. So find a skill that you find interesting or you believe will be useful and pursue it for a long period of time. Something that you're curious about again. Study it intently and consistently. And yeah, if you do it if you do something over a long enough period of time with consistency, you're going to get good at it, right? It doesn't matter what it is, whatever you find interesting that you believe could be useful. Ideally, a marketable skill. So, for example, programming is one. If not, then maybe sales and communication. That's another. Maybe how to trade derivatives in the financial markets. That's another. Or even something like graphic design. That's another. There's so many different options. Find what you are most curious about and most enthusiastic about learning, or most excited about learning, and then just go ahead and learn it. And when you spend more time developing that skill set, after you've finished getting good at that skill set, which you never will, by the way, you're going to continuously learn new things if you're open-minded. But when you get good with that skill, you'll be able to pursue other things. There'll be more opportunities open to you, right? Like, what's more impressive, right? A person who's graduated university with just a degree and the skill sets from that degree, or a person who's graduated university with the skill sets from that degree, as well as 1 to 2 other skills, like high-value marketable skills, like they understand graphic design, for example, so they could be very useful for marketing. They understand programming, so they can be very, very good when working they can potentially be a solutions engineer if they pursue the sales role, or they could be a software engineer, especially if it's at a startup and you need people to wear different hats. That could be really useful. Who are you going to go for? You're going to pick the person with most skills, right? So I would say spend time learning one skill. You don't have to be a university student to do this, by the way. You can be any age, but learn a skill, go tunnel vision, and just go deep onto it, right? That's the advice I'm going to give for rule number 17. Rule number 18 is avoid having an opinion on everything. This ties into the news and politics rule, but just to reiterate about this rule, you don't want to just talk about this rule further, you don't need to have an opinion on every single thing in the world. That's just terrible. You're going to take away all of your mental bandwidth on things that are completely irrelevant to your life, right? There's so many things in the world to have an opinion on. It's okay to say, I don't have enough opinion. I don't have an opinion about this. Like I say this all. That's a phrase I say very often. I don't have an opinion about this, or I don't know enough about this topic to have an opinion on. So, yeah, because I just don't care about it, right? If someone comes up to me and says, I don't know, what do you think about, I don't know, Adobe Lightroom? I don't know. I've used it for 10 minutes. I don't have an opinion on it. If someone asks me a different question about something that I am interested in, then yeah, I'll have an opinion on it. That's fine. Have maybe maximum 10 opinions. I'd say have 5, really speaking. Again, 5 having, that's like a golden number at this point. But have 5 opinions that you believe very strongly, because with those 5 opinions, you can branch into other hypotheses, and some of those could be contrarian, and that could lead somewhere good, because being contrarian is very interesting. It can be very, very useful to you later on. I'm not going to explain why being contrarian is super useful. I might make a future video about it if you want it, but have very limited opinions and go deep on them, because you'll be able to stand on your own 2 feet properly when discussing those opinions, versus thinking about everything and not having enough depth because you just physically can't, right? If you had like 100 units and you had each layer of depth was 1 unit and each opinion was 1 unit, you can have 10 opinions with 10 layers deep, right? That's 100, right? Or you can have 100 opinions with only 1 layer deep. You see what I mean? And that's why I say 5, because then you can have deeper. And if you have even fewer, it's best not to have like one or 2 opinions. You can if you want to, but you know, you might want to broaden a little bit, just so that way you can have more than 2 conversations about things, especially if they're deep conversations. So yeah, don't have an opinion on everything. Rule number 19, don't chase the hot thing. So this is very, very interesting to have a talk about, because right now AI is kind of the hot thing. Before it was crypto. And you know, there's a saying, it's like when you hear a taxi driver talking about crypto, no shade to taxi drivers or anything, but when you hear anyone talking about crypto, it's a good idea to get out of crypto, because that's when it's kind of hit the peak of a hype cycle. So something you're seeing right now is you're seeing people passionate about AI and they're just finding excuses to have AI into their products, and I don't think that's a good idea, because it's not serving the end user. Instead, it's probably better to identify what your user actually wants and then build a use case around that. And if that involves AI, then great. But most people would just chase the hot thing because they believe that's what they need to do in order to be a part of it. But when you're chasing the hot thing, unless it's absolutely required, you're more than likely not going to get anything out of it. You're not going to get anything fruitful out of it. In fact, the best times to actually get the most results are when everyone's skeptical. So like, really speaking, if you wanted to get the most returns from crypto at the moment, right, the best time would be right now, because everyone is not focused. Everyone is taking a huge dump on crypto. It seems like the thing that's just fading away out of existence, but there's a good chance it will probably rebound. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but there's a good chance it probably will if it follows the standard sine graph. And you know, you'll probably get better returns. So look for unpopular things instead of the hot thing. And if you do end up chasing the hot thing, be aware that at some point the bubble will burst. Very rarely will you see exceptions to this rule, where when you reach the peak of a hype cycle, it'll start to extrapolate even further. That's probably good. That might happen with AI, right? Because that actually has some sort of utility for production. But most things that are the hot flavor of the month are completely stupid to pursue and chase, so don't do that. Like, I'm seeing a lot of consumer startups now jump into B2B SaaS, and that's just they're just ruining it. Actually, a good metric to see is when the internet marketers start to get into something, that's probably a good sign to run, because they're ruining everything. And if you're already in it, then it's a good sign to start battening down the hatches, because bloodbath's probably going to start. Right, rule number 20 is ignore your instincts for unfamiliar domains. So if you're new to something, do not trust your gut. Your gut will tell you to do certain things, and you will listen to it inevitably because it feels good, but you're wrong. Your gut does not know anything about these unfamiliar domains. if you're getting into if you're doing something new, for example, if you're making videos and you have a person that's giving you advice about what to do, and they're a successful content creator, for example, listen to them. Do not listen to your gut as much, because your gut doesn't know anything about this realm. You're completely new to it. Do not trust your gut. Listen to advice from other people. The things you can trust your gut about are things that you are familiar with. So, for example, if you're new to startups, don't trust your gut about startups, but you can trust your gut about people. And that's a saying that Paul Graham said in one of his talks, which is why I thought I'd broaden it out from just having it from a startup realm to domains in general, because it's very, very interesting that people will just run with their gut and make gut decisions when their gut is completely wrong. You need to fine tune your gut, right? There's something called Bayesian probability, which basically means that as you start to take on more information, it sort of stacks up and you can sort of guess a relative probability of something happening, right? Or the likelihood of something being real or not. So you can apply Bayesian probability to unfamiliar domains. So if you know nothing, don't trust your gut, because your gut knows nothing. Take advice, and as you see more and more, as you get more information, you can start to build your own sort of probability scale, and you can get a guess as to what things are, and you can fine tune your gut to make the right decisions. Your gut knows nothing. Okay, you need to train it like an AI model. You must pass it data. It's like your gut in an unfamiliar territory is like, it's like an unsupervised learning model, right? An unsupervised learning model is basically a model where you pass it data and it does trial and error, right? Similarly, your gut's like that. You need to fine tune it by passing on data, even though it's had no data previously. You start passing it data, and then eventually it starts to learn, right? So, yeah, don't trust your instincts for unfamiliar domains. Don't worry, this is a glass of cola. I have it in this glass because I like the design of these glasses, but yeah, I just drink soft drinks out of it. I probably should drink a lot less cola. Maybe I will do that for this year. I don't know. But hopefully I will. Maybe I will. I don't know. I don't really have any issue with it, but whatever. Rule number 20 is... Sorry, I've already just gone through rule number 20. Sorry. Rule number 21 is to create a friendship hierarchy. Now, this is something that I certainly got a lot of criticism for because I was public with it with people, and that was a dumb idea. But here's what a friendship hierarchy looks like. So you have 3 layers, right? You have your friends, right? You have your friends there. You have acquaintances, which is this big bucket. And then you have people you're indifferent to, / don't like, don't know, whatever, right? They're the bottom layer. Most people will fit into this middle layer, which are your acquaintances. And the way I like to think about this is like this. So this bottom bucket is people that I don't know, I've never met before, right? Which is most of the people on planet Earth. It is people that I have had interactions with and have not been positive interactions, and therefore I do not want to have further interactions with. They fall into this bucket. The next bucket above that are acquaintances, and this has 3 tiers. This is the high-level acquaintance, the median acquaintance, and the lower tier acquaintance. So the lowest tier acquaintance is essentially someone that I know, right? They're okay with, like if we're in a group setting, I'll interact with them and so on, and we're okay. We're not going to be disrespectful or anything, but I wouldn't hang out with them in a one-to-one setting, right? The median tier is basically somebody where I know them to an extent. I know them reasonably well, right? We know some details about each other's lives, right? Like our birthdays, what we do and stuff. Things that we find interesting. We might have had some conversations which are deeper than surface level conversations, but it's still in a relative group setting. I might hang out with this person, but again, not always certain. And most people would define my median acquaintance as their actual friend. They are not your friend, but they're just a median acquaintance, at least in my book. The top tier acquaintance is essentially where somebody is, I guess I know them pretty well, like really well, and we can definitely hang out one-to-one, but I wouldn't trust them with my intimate secrets and problems, basically. And the top is my friends, which would basically be people that I can absolutely and utterly trust completely, people that I know have my best interests at heart, people that I can confide into, and people that I would spend one-to-one time with and actively do try to spend one-to-one time with, right? Those are my friends. And when you filter this down, you'll probably only, if you're like rational about it, you probably only have a couple of people there at the top. Most people, when you realize if you have 100 people that you know that you consider to be your friends, right? Most people will fit here. They won't fit to the top. And here's and now you might think, well, this is just stupid. You should have as many friends as you can. No, you won't have as many deep relationships. You can certainly be acquaintances with people, but what will end up happening is, especially if you're young, there's going to be a lot more drama. And when I realized this when I was about 18, 19, I created this hierarchy and started sticking to it. And something interesting happened. When I did this and I actually followed it, I suddenly found that I didn't have any drama. I wonder why. Probably because the two people that I consider to be my actual friends were not people who were going to cause me headaches and cause drama. They were just going to be my friend, like they should. But the people who are in these two median bucket, the median and the lower tier acquaintance bucket, they did cause drama. And some of them even fell off into this bottom bucket where I just didn't have any pleasant interactions, and I just said, okay, no more interactions, please, thank you. So yeah, most people's friends are in this middle bucket, towards the middle and bottom, but they're not your friends. People at the top are your friends, and people in the top acquaintance tier can definitely be promoted to your friends, but it can also be promoted down to your friends when you get to know them more. So that's how I like to have a friendship hierarchy, especially when I'm meeting new people. You can define the criteria of whatever you want to consider as a friend, but I guess some basic criteria, especially if you're younger and watching this, is, can you trust them? If you tell them good news, are they happy for you? When you're messing up, do they tell you that you're messing up and show you how you can improve? And when you're going through something, are they there to support you? Those are some basic principles. You don't have to talk every day. You don't have to be like together all the time. That's not a requirement. But those top 4 absolutely should be. Because if you can't tell good news to somebody that you consider to be a friend, they're not your friend. I once had a guy that I told good news to, and he, instead of celebrating my accomplishments, he instead just questioned why I was doing anything in the first place. He was like, why are you doing this? Don't do this. This is stupid. Like, it wasn't good. It wasn't bad. It was a celebration. I was celebrating something, and he was like, why are you celebrating this? You know what I mean? It wasn't in a way to encourage me to do better. He was like, you should just give up. No point. That's not helpful. If you have friends who are critical about you, in a way because they want you to improve, that's a good thing. But if you have friends that are just critical about your successes because they're jealous or envious of you and they don't want you to succeed, then cut them out of your life. Rule number 22 is spend 90% of your time getting the foundations right. Most of the answers are in the basics. Master the basics and focus the majority of your time on there. Spend 10% on the more advanced things. I talked about this a lot in my last video, so I won't go too deep into it. But if you don't get the foundations right, the rest of the house will collapse. Spend a lot of time on the basics and getting the basics right, because that's where oftentimes where all of the answers lie. And sometimes the basics, if, for example, if you're learning a skill, the basics doesn't have to be just a skill. It can just be about you and your mindset. That's a basic thing to get right. So spend 90% of time on the foundations and 10% of time on the more advanced stuff. But don't jump to the advanced stuff before you get the foundations down. And then the final rule is to learn to identify the underlying intentions of people. People will act towards you for a certain reason. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Try to identify the underlying intentions. So that often means just listening more, letting them speak more, or asking questions in a way that's not threatening and confronting. When you understand someone's underlying intentions, you can make a decision as to what you want to do for your next move. If you want to continue down that same path with that person, if you've got a pure heart and they're just trying to do some good for you, then that's great. Go ahead. if they're trying to harm you down the road by getting you to do something that you feel in your heart is wrong, that's not a good idea. And you've been able to identify the underlying intentions. So the way you identify that is just by, honestly, just waiting, listening more, asking the right questions, and trusting your gut for this. Because you can trust your gut for people for the most part. So listen to your gut. When it's time to get out of a situation, get out of a situation as fast as you can. Especially if people are trying to manipulate you. And a lot of people are manipulative. There are a lot. I believe there are more good people than bad people, but it would be naive to assume that there aren't any manipulative people in the world. So be conscious of that. And just as a bonus rule is to give more love to the world. You know, there's a lot of darkness right now in the world. There's a lot of bad things happening. There's a lot of fear, uncertainty, doubt, a lot of negativity out there. Try to spread some good. Try to do something kind for someone else without asking for anything back. Try to be a beacon of light in a sea of darkness. And try to inspire others to be that beacon. And if you can do that, that will be enough to change the world. You will be the domino that changed the world. And that was 24 rules to dominate 2023. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one. Peace.